So an academic program is very academic. An apprenticeship is very work focused and making sure that it stretches you and challenges you in a totally different way. Your training provider or a training provider will look at what your previous knowledge is and your experience, and then map a training program to stretch and challenge you. That's what the Ofsted framework is about. So ours was very much around stretching and challenging individuals to get the best that they can. Past merit distinction, you may take somebody from school and get them to a merit or a distinction, and they've done an incredible journey there.
Most young people leave education with qualifications, but little clarity about how to get hired or build something of their own. This is Future Careers Made Clear. Practical conversations about how early careers actually take shape. Hi, welcome back to Future Careers Made Clear. On the podcast today, I've got my guest, Patrick Tucker. I'm delighted to have him here because we're going to be talking about apprenticeships and particularly learning more about the non-degree apprenticeship options as well as those very well-known degree apprenticeships. So, Patrick, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course. Hi, Patrick Tucker. I've been in the education apprenticeship world for the last 25 years. I co-own an Ofsted Grade 1 apprenticeship training provider called Apprenticeships, Professional Apprenticeships Limited. And I've also got my own consultancy organisation supporting colleges, universities, training providers.
Great, thank you very much. So how did you first get involved in apprenticeships?
I'm an ex-apprentice myself from school, automotive engineering, straight from school into an apprenticeship with a large dealership operating across Fiat, Peugeot and Nissan. I completed my apprenticeship and then stayed at the dealership for a number of years. And then I wanted to get into teaching, really. So I started I live in Somerset. So I started locally with an independent training provider and really gone through the motions, gone through becoming an assessor to senior leader, quality manager of a large college, director of a few training providers, and then with my co-directors and co-owners founded Professional Apprenticeships Limited, and we're 10 years old this April.
Fantastic. So such a depth of knowledge and experience. So really pleased to have you here. So let's just step back to the beginning for a minute. So for a young person, I think particularly parents as well, can you actually tell us what an apprenticeship is?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to give you the DFE terminology because that will vary depending upon where you are across the UK. But from my perspective, it's a paid job where you work and train simultaneously. You earn a wage while gaining job-specific skills and a formal qualification. That can take anything now from a minimum of 8 to 12 months all the way up to 5, 6, 7 years, depending upon the apprenticeship that you're on. And it also brings in hands-on experience and what employers are looking for to close those skills gaps for employers.
And I guess also you're learning more about what it means to be an employee.
Yes, yeah, because you're not just you're not in education in such. You've got a formal contract of employment. You are in employment and you're being employed to do a job as well as do your learning, hands-on experience and theoretical learning throughout your time as well.
Thank you. And out of interest, the learning style, how would someone find that differs from what you've got a particular way that things are taught in schools. How does it differ when you're still going to the classroom to learn during an apprenticeship?
So we're still inspected by Ofsted. We still have the Ofsted inspection framework, and we have other funding rules that we need to abide by. So we currently, professional apprenticeships are Ofsted Outstanding across every area. The learning will depend upon Whether you want to do group learning will depend upon if it's one-to-one learning online, you can be in a classroom environment, or depending upon which apprenticeship it is, you can be taught at your employer's workplace as well. And I think it's also important to note that a number of very large employers are also apprenticeship training providers in their own right. So they obviously have a particular skills need that they want to fill, and then they can train you to their own specific ways in their own workplace settings. That's very heavy in the sectors like engineering.
Okay, and so it sounds like it's very varied depending fundamentally on your employer and your training provider.
Yes, and the apprenticeship that you're undertaking. So a leadership and management apprenticeship, for example, would be taught in a different way to artificial intelligence. Delivery will be the same, obviously somebody imparting knowledge, but the way that it's taught and what you're learning will vary depending upon what the apprenticeship is.
Thank you. And in terms of the practicalities, do you get the same amount of learning every week, or is it in blocks, or does it vary depending on your particular scheme?
Well, once again, that will vary depending upon the scheme, your employer, and your training provider as well. So it can be blocks. A lot of engineering, automotive engineering can be done in blocks where as a 16, 17, 18 plus, you can go away to college or to a training provider. It can be in a classroom environment where you come to a training provider or to college or university. So you're in a classroom, or it can be spread across the term of the apprenticeship weekly, or it can be spasmodic, really. 4 hours of learning one day, 15 hours of learning next week. So your training plan is built in accordance with your individual needs and your employer's needs.
So it sounds like it's a very bespoke experience compared to school.
Yes, very individualized, very bespoke, very tailored to the apprentice's needs as well as the employer's needs and what the apprenticeship program is about.
Sounds great. So let's get down to the details. So there's a lot of confusion around apprenticeship levels, I think. So a lot of people have heard of degree apprenticeships, which we know are level 6 apprenticeships, but there are actually apprenticeships that run from level 2 right through to level 7. Could you walk us through kind of literally step by step a beginner's guide to apprenticeship levels?
Yeah, I shall try. So level 2 is what I would call entry level. So rather than talk through each level, I'll do it as a progression angle if that's okay.
Yeah.
It might work out easier. We deliver a lot of digital marketing, social media, content creation programs. So we can take somebody that's just finished school or just finished their A-levels onto, let's go at level 3, multi-channel marketer. That program can last from 12 to 18, 24 months. At the end of their program, they have what they call an endpoint assessment, which is an independent assessment where an independent body comes in and assesses their knowledge, skills, and behaviours. And they'll be graded, and they could be a pass, merit, or distinction, depending upon what the apprenticeship is. Some of our learners complete that level 3 program, and then they progress on to a level 4. So if we're following the marketing, it would go multi-channel marketer at level 3, and then marketing executive at level 4. And that will be another duration of, say, 12 to 15, 18 months. Once they've then completed that program and achieved that, then they can move on to marketing manager level 6, or the digital marketer, which is a degree apprenticeship at level 6. So there's progressions all the way through, depending upon which sector and which channel you decide to go on. But it's, I talk to a lot to people around, they don't want their son or daughter to go on to a lower level. They'd rather a higher level or a level 6 or a degree apprenticeship. I think from the parent's perspective, I can understand that, being a parent myself. But then from an employment perspective, you're taking somebody from a low level entry from school all the way through the progression, and you can progress them right up to be a fully capable level 6 degree apprenticeship. So I think it's very important to start at the lower levels, depending upon where you are within your age range and your previous experience, obviously, and then progress through to gain that knowledge and understanding of what it's like to work somewhere.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like, for example, if you had the choice between almost being parachuted in at level 6 degree apprenticeship standard, or if you were perhaps starting at level 3 and working up maybe through 3, 4, 5, 6, it sounds like if you did the latter option, you actually worked your way up, you'd have a greater depth of experience and knowledge by the time you get to level 6.
Yes. Like I said, it depends upon your starting point. So you might get some A-level leavers that have got really good A-levels and then may feel that the next stage would be a higher level 5, level 6, level 7 apprenticeship. So I see that as a natural pathway. So it really starts on the individual and their starting point, I believe. And then we've also got to take that if you're on a higher level apprenticeship that can last for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you want to complete that pathway. So you don't want to be made redundant. Clearly, nobody wants to be made redundant, but on an apprenticeship, it's even more important. And somebody who's 16 or 17 will change throughout that 5 or 6 or 7 years. So the retention on a level, a higher level program is much more intense than it is a lower level. And you're still gaining the experience and knowledge to progress through in a much more progressive way. And everybody's different. Their learning approaches are different and how you learn are different. So I think if you can, I akin it to eating an elephant, chunk it down into small chunks, and then you'll finally get through the elephant. But if you just plow straight in, it'll be, for some it'll be incredibly difficult. For others, it'll be incredibly easy, depending upon what they want to do and how passionate they are. Because the academic grades are really good, obviously, but I think it's also about passion and whether you want to do it. You can have really fantastic GCSE grades, A-level grades, but if you don't want to do it, then you're not going to progress through.
So true, so true. And it's interesting, I wanted to pick up on a point you mentioned a little bit earlier in what you were saying, which was about the fact that young people, they change. So what somebody thinks they might want to do when they're 16 may be vastly different from what they're thinking when they're 22, 23. So if you started perhaps on apprenticeship pathway, say at post 18, so perhaps you went on to level 3 or level 4, could you chop and change, or are you very committed to one career path once you start at level 3 or level 4?
Okay, that's an interesting question. From my perspective, I would want them to achieve that apprenticeship for multiple reasons. One, self-esteem for the individual. Two, they have achieved something, and I think that's really good to get onto somebody's CV or onto their LinkedIn profile. For me as a training provider, I obviously want somebody to achieve and complete, because we've done our job right. But saying that, if you're halfway through the program and it isn't right for you, obviously, first and foremost, you're employed. So you need to have that conversation with your employer, because they might not want to take you off that apprenticeship. You might lose your job. So it isn't just swapping an education program when you're at college. I don't want to do A-levels. I'm going to focus on a BTEC. First and foremost, you're employed. So I think it's important to have that conversation with your employer, because you may lose your job. That will obviously mean, income lost as well. So there's a multitude aspect to it, really. But if it isn't right for you, then obviously you need to stop, reevaluate, and then you can move on somewhere else.
And I think in terms of kind of making young people work ready and learning about being in the workplace, having that commitment to work their way through the apprenticeship is really important. What I was particularly wondering is if, say, somebody did a level 3 apprenticeship in a topic and they completed it, and then they had slightly different interests, would they be able to move to a slightly different pathway at level 4, level 5?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the pathway isn't set dependent upon your starting point. So let's take the digital marketing, for example, which is multi-channel marketer, level 3. If you complete that, and there's an aspect in it of AI that you really like, because we do an AI multi-channel marketer and content creation. There's now a level 4 AI, and there's also a level 6 and a level 7 AI. So complete the apprenticeship, and then if you decide marketing isn't for me, but actually AI is, then you can look at switching to AI. Clearly, that will depend upon, is there a specific apprenticeship in your employment at that stage, or are there any open? But yes, there's nothing stopping you. I'm aware of individuals that have finished a skills boot camp or finished college or an apprenticeship in, say, engineering and then gone into hairdressing, which I know seems really bizarre, but actually, I'm one that believes in what I'm going to call a squiggly ladder career, rather than, without saying old-fashioned, rather than start your career here and progress up through. I think those days are gone. Where I started and what I'm doing now are fields apart. So having that squiggly career, I think, is really important, and you gain different aspects. So I would applaud somebody that decides to change. Obviously, I would advocate for them to finish their initial program first, and then look at changing. Yeah,
really interesting. And just in terms of the kind of slightly chopping and changing, if in terms of the levels again, so if someone has completed, say, a level 3 course, so say they've completed 3 A levels or a couple of A levels in BTEC or something like that, so they've finished their level 3 education, can they then go on to a level 3 apprenticeship, or do they have to keep going up the numbers in terms of the levels?
No, they can come down further to a level 2. So the recognition of prior learning and experience comes into an apprenticeship program. So let's take the BTEC or the A levels in. Let's go law. So somebody's doing A levels in college, A level in law, criminology, etc. That then will mean that they could look at a level 3 apprenticeship as a paralegal, or they may feel that that they're at the right time to go on to a level 7 as a solicitor, for example. So depending upon how much knowledge and learning you've gained will depend upon where the apprenticeship is. So just because you may achieve a level 6 or a level 7, that can be academic or it can be an apprenticeship, but you can still start a level 3 apprenticeship program.
That's interesting. And what would you say to, I'm thinking of a case I heard about quite recently, where a parent was really quite concerned because their child's just finishing A levels and actually wants to go across onto a level 3 apprenticeship, and the parent's really concerned about perhaps that's not challenging enough. What would you say to that parent?
Okay, what would I say to the parent? I'd be very careful in what I said to the parent, clearly. Well, it really depends upon if they've just done a level 3, as in the A level. Clearly, they're not working. They will have work experience, but it's not the same as full-time work. The job specification and the job skills will be totally different. The partnership working, the collaboration working with your team members at work will be different than in a college or a training provider environment. The level depends upon what it is that they've done for their A levels and where they're going on to the level 3. I would say it would be slightly more challenging. If they're more academic, it might be less challenging. But if you build into the working environment, understanding how the knowledge and skills working within teams, the behaviors of an employer, they may go and work for a multinational employer. The behaviors will be totally different. So an academic program is very academic. An apprenticeship is very work focused and making sure that it stretches you and challenges you in a totally different way. Your training provider or a training provider will look at what your previous knowledge is and your experience, and then they map a training program to stretch and challenge you. That's what the Ofsted framework is about. So ours was very much around stretching and challenging individuals to get the best that they can. Past merit distinction, You may take somebody from school and get them to a merit or a distinction, and they've done an incredible journey there. You may take somebody from an A level and take them to a pass. Seems like they haven't done much of a journey, but actually they're in full-time employment and they're working, and it's team collaboration. So I don't think it can be against a particular set of criteria, level 3 versus level 3. I think there's too much variety involved because you've got the job specification, the work skills, the team bonding, etc.
Yeah, so it sounds like actually it's a really complementary product in terms of education because
Yes.
the A levels are very narrow, and they're learning so many different things about the workplace that really it's not something to be concerned about at all.
No, and when you look, and I can't remember the exact figure, but as of April 2026, if you're 16 to 18, like I said, please don't quote me. But I think it's over £8, £8.72, I think. So over the course of a year, that's circa £21,000. Well, for a 17, 18-year-old, earning £21,000 and getting a nationally recognised qualification that can take them across the world, I personally think that's very valuable.
Yeah, it sounds really good. And a lot of parents are aware of the degree apprenticeship specifically. And I know there's kind of two issues around that. One of them is I think it's very difficult to do a level 6 apprenticeship alongside a degree apprenticeship, alongside a degree. And also, could you talk also about the difference between a straight level 6 apprenticeship and a degree apprenticeship?
Yes. So let's take level 6. I call it PCP. So it's Project Controls Professional. It's a level 6 program that doesn't have a degree integrated in it or doesn't have a degree alongside it. So a learner can be on that particular program for, I think it's 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And they will come out with a level 6 qualification that's signed off by the Department for Education as currently Skills England. So they have a level 6 approved qualification that a lot of employers have endorsed. They could move on, they could progress if they wanted to, but they have a level 6 that will take them across the world. Other level 6 programs that have got a degree in it, yes, you are absolutely right. They're doing the level 6, the integrated degree, and these are the key points now. The integrated degree is integrated into the apprenticeship. So when you're going through the apprenticeship, you're already doing the degree.
Okay.
If it isn't an integrated degree and there's a degree alongside it, you're doing the apprenticeship and the degree. So I think there's many variables here. Still the same amount of time, it could be a less amount of time depending upon the prior knowledge and experience you've gained. But I always say to people, I'll come on to an example in a minute. I always say to people, what's the fascination with a degree? So I find that really, for me personally, I find that really fascinating. I'm going to, as an example, I'll give the level 7 solicitor apprenticeship. And a lot of people are surprised about this. But when you look at the level 7 solicitor apprenticeship, I'll call it a specification on Skills England's website, there is no degree in it. And a lot of people are now in the confusion of, they always thought that lawyers, solicitors had to have a degree. But what's happened is they've mapped the level 7 apprenticeship against what employers want. The endpoint assessment, this is what currently is what is called a SQE, Solicitor Qualifying Exam.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've done all of your learning. The Solicitor Qualifying Exam, which is the most important bit because the degree isn't, is what makes you qualified as a solicitor. That's what the endpoint assessment is for apprenticeships. Some may have a degree. Some universities or higher education institutes might build a degree into it. But I always say that's good if you want a degree, but that's secondary. If your main aim is to become a solicitor, the end game is to achieve that qualifying exam, not to achieve a degree.
Yeah, and I guess the thing with the apprenticeships is by definition they are a much more vocational option, and they are very much focused on employability and employment fundamentally.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and leading on from that, I think again just some misconceptions, perhaps parents in particular, and probably young people to some extent. I think that there's a strong familiarity with there being apprenticeships in engineering, in finance, in law. They would be probably the top three, I think, that people will be aware of. What else can you do an apprenticeship in?
Oh, wow. Wow. Many. Construction, clearly, manufacturing, logistics, nurse. There's even the NHS. There's an apprenticeship to become a doctor. That's at level 7. Nuclear reactor desk engineer, space engineer. So it's really varied. It is really varied. And maybe as part of this podcast, you could put a link to the Skills England page where you can search the apprenticeships, because I think it'd be fascinating for parents, learners, people, individuals completing school or college to go and have a look. Marketing executive, social media, artificial intelligence. I mean, it's so varied. And I think that surprises people as well.
Yeah, it sounds like almost the best bet is to assume there is an apprenticeship and then go looking for it.
Yes, yeah, especially within England. And I'm pinpointing England because Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland have a different outset to how they build apprenticeships. But for within England, there is a huge amount of apprenticeships out there. Chartered manager, accountancy, look at some of the accountancy programs that are there now, which start at level 3, level 4, AAT approved, and go all the way up through to level 6, level 7, and degree in accountancy. So you can chartered surveyor, estate agent. I mean, it is really endless.
It's really exciting. The more I research, the more excited I am, because it's like, oh, that's really cool. Oh, that's really interesting. There's just so many different things.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel when you look at careers advice and guidance, I feel it's and you look at impartial, this is the key point to me. If you look at impartial advice and guidance, it's making sure that you open somebody's eyes up to all of it, not just focus on the academic route, A level, what I'll call the old traditional route. Look at all the pathways available now, and there are some amazing pathways out there, like we've just explored. Some of the very large organisations, well, almost every large organisation I'm aware of will be utilising what I call their apprenticeship levy. So they have an intake of apprentices, or they'll be recruiting for apprentices. And I think it's also important to note that some of our apprentices are older as well. So our oldest apprentice was, I believe, in their 60s. So it's also about upskilling and reskilling as well. Isn't just about coming from school. So and within this world now, and artificial intelligence and social media and cybersecurity, I think there are some really, really great, amazing apprenticeships out there that I believe people should go and explore.
And it's really interesting you've picked up on the point that you can do apprenticeships when you're older. I'll be quite interested to see, perhaps we get to a point where parents are researching this with their young people, and perhaps the parent starts an apprenticeship as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm familiar with a number of people my age, and I'm not sure of your age, but probably your age, that are on apprenticeships. So part of what we do within professional apprenticeships is go in and support skills needs and training needs within organisations. So we're like I call it a talent architecture. So we go in and support the organisation in where their skills needs are, and we can fill that skills needs by apprenticeship programs. And in April, the government are releasing apprenticeship units, which I believe is really exciting. So as an individual, and you've been at work for a number of years, you might want to reskill or upskill in AI. So rather than do the whole apprenticeship, we can look at picking out individual programs for you. So short programs, 30, 40, 50 hours, and deliver an intense program for you out of the apprenticeship levy.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting changes, and it's interesting you talk again about the old people. So obviously, I'm not in my 20s, and I completed my senior leader apprenticeship at level 7 about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was it was a really challenging couple of years working on it, but it was such an exciting time, and I learned so much from it. So I'd really recommend it.
Yeah, no, and so would I. And I think one point I missed, especially around school leavers and for parents, is with an apprenticeship. I'm not going to say there aren't any fees, because there will be fees, but not in terms of fees in paying for the apprenticeship. So if you take somebody on a journey at level 3, at level 4, level 5, 6, or 7, there is no fees for them, especially if it's a degree apprenticeship. There's fees obviously for them to get to work, and their attire. But I class that as different than maybe following a university route and, building up a large, even though it's not a debt, it is a debt, even
Yes.
though a large debt. There's a world out there which I believe, individuals need to explore.
Yeah, I think so. And even the kind of costs you mentioned, like making sure you're appropriately dressed for work and getting yourself to work, obviously completely offset by the fact you're earning a wage.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. So let's think about if we've got someone who's a school leaver, perhaps 16 or 18, and they're thinking they would like to apply for apprenticeship. When an employer's recruiting an entry level apprenticeship at that first job level, what kind of things are they really looking for? Because probably that person hasn't had much work experience, if any.
Yeah. Okay. So the first part I would say would be to identify a training provider within their local region, approach the training provider, to see if there's any opportunities, but also speak to the training provider about becoming skills ready, job ready. So tailoring the CV, for example, what does a good CV look like? As well as having a LinkedIn profile, which I know can be quite interesting for a 16 or 17-year-old. But by promoting yourself and having a really sharp LinkedIn profile, as well as researching what that job is, what that job entails, and what the apprenticeship entails. I'm not saying nobody will, but are they going to last that journey? Will they last 3 or 4 or 5 years, possibly, or 6 years, depending upon what apprenticeship? Do they really want to do it? And don't just have one option. Somebody, let's take the law scenario, somebody that wants to become a solicitor, that's great, and I applaud that. But what happens if there isn't any jobs out there as a solicitor? Are there any other avenues that you can go down within law? So there's, talking about apprenticeships earlier, there's a police constable degree apprenticeship. There's also forensic science. So there's a lot of pathways out there, and explore all of them. On the Skills England website, they have an area called occupational maps. So it will take you from an occupation and explore different routes with you. So I'll go and explore. And this may sound like a very minute point, but I think it's worth mentioning. Some of the email names that we see can be quite interesting. So if you've put an email address when you're 12, 13, 14, that's got some words in it that isn't very professional, maybe just have a very straightforward Gmail account with your name. So I think it's presenting yourself in the right way, making sure you do your research on the job, the employer, and the apprenticeship, and becoming job ready, really.
Yeah,
Presenting yourself in a good way.
Yeah, and the presenting yourself, I think, is key, isn't it? And like with the email, you can just go and make yourself a fresh email account that you can use for professional purposes, and then you can keep your one with strange words if you really need to, but you don't use it for work purposes. But that's basic learning about employability. So I'll just pick up on one point you mentioned earlier. You said the first thing to do would be go to a training provider. Now, I'm not sure that all parents would know what we mean by a training provider. So can you just explain that point?
Yeah, of course. So college. So a training provider from my angle would be a college, university, independent training provider like professional apprenticeships. So let me explore that in a bit more depth. If somebody goes onto the Skills England website and finds the apprenticeship program, pulls up that apprenticeship program. On the right-hand side of the page, about halfway down, it says find apprenticeship training providers that deliver this apprenticeship. Click into that and up will come a list of apprenticeship providers. You can then sort that by your geographical location. So where's the nearest to me? And then I feel it's just a case of going onto their website, maybe filling out an initial contact form, picking up the phone, sending an email, and just engage in a conversation. So the colleges, universities, training providers, even the employers, if they're on that Find Apprenticeship Training website, are there to support you. That is one of their mandates that they've got to do by having a DFE contract under, as well as through Ofsted. So that's what I class as a training provider.
Yeah, thank you. And so if you're in England, the Skills England website is clearly a really key place. What about if you're in Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland?
Yeah, so they will have their same. They will have the same. I'm not entirely sure what they're called. But I think the Welsh one is called Apprenticeship for Wales, for example. But it will mimic the same. And the training providers are the same. They could be independent training providers, colleges, universities. But if you're still at school, the first point I would say is go into, even at college, go and explore with your careers advisor. What is it that you want to do after you finish school or college? Just engage in a conversation with them and ask them, where is my closest training provider? Now, clearly for a college, they are a training provider. But if it's something they don't offer, not all colleges offer all of the apprenticeships. So ask them the question. And, I feel it's important for somebody to become job ready to also do their research as well. So it's always very good to have research skills. So, go and have a look at Skills England, go and have a look at Apprenticeship for Wales, if that's what they're called. Go and speak to your careers advisor and go and have a look at the employers as well. Many employers will have a careers webpage on their website. Go and explore that because that can be invaluable. And even go into a recruitment firm. Go and speak to a recruitment firm because a huge amount of recruitment firms recruit for large organizations that are looking to utilize their apprenticeship. So I'm aware of one large organization. It's a very large engineering firm that uses a recruitment firm to recruit for their apprenticeships. So it's going and exploring that avenue.
Right. And so it's just being a bit proactive really seems to be a big thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And now obviously there's quite an awareness that school is not for everybody. Okay, some people are just not really suited particularly to the academic route, and so they may come through school and they love perhaps some of the more vocational subjects, and they're perhaps always going to do well at vocational things. To what extent do GCSEs matter when you're applying for an apprenticeship? If you do badly, is that going to be a big problem? Or do attitude and behaviours matter more? Well,
okay. So doing badly, I would never advocate anybody purposely doing badly.
No,
obviously. But
some people are weaker at academics.
Yeah. So if you have done badly, or if you haven't got the grades that you wanted to achieve, within the apprenticeship funding rules, and I know this is slightly different to how some employers will recruit, but by the time that you've completed, so I'm going to talk 16 to 19 now. By the time that you've completed your apprenticeship, you have to complete functional skills, which aren't GCSEs. So they're work embedded. So it's English and maths, so literacy and numeracy. So throughout your apprenticeship program, you need to complete your functional skills, which is a level 2 qualification. You may have poor GCSE grades. That isn't a limiting factor for an apprenticeship. So I left school with no GCSEs at all. I'm now got a master's degree. So earlier I said everybody's journey is different. My journey was different. Everybody's journey is different. So if you don't do well at school, it literally isn't the end of the world. There is so much help available. So then it means going to speaking to your careers advisor at college, at school, or going to speak to an independent training provider like Professional Apprenticeships. And if they can't help, they should be able, or they should refer you to somebody that can. But doing poor in your GCSEs is not a limiting factor at all. No.
Fantastic. I think that's really encouraging, because I think some of those kids feel they haven't got the options that they would like to have. And it's just because the school system doesn't always fit them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So just to pick up on the functional skills, so the functional skills, I think, will be in English and maths. And so the functional skills are effectively continuing to develop English and maths skills in the absence of a grade 4 or above at English, maths, GCSE or equivalent.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. If you don't have the required grade, so the GCSE grade or an equivalent, depending upon where you're from, then you'll be put onto a program called Functional Skills, and it would take you through the journey to achieve a functional skills at level 2.
Right. And do some employers insist on the grade 4 in GCSE English and maths or equivalent?
Yes, they do, depending upon the apprenticeship program. But rather than see it on the website and go, oh, I don't have that GCSE grade, engage in a conversation with the training provider. Because depending upon the apprenticeship, clearly, it might not be a limiting factor. It might just be an entry grade that they've always put and they feel that they need to put. But engage in a conversation with the training provider and say, I didn't get the required grade. However, I am very passionate. It's something that I want to do. I'm willing to do my functional skills. What I'm trying to say is be proactive, engage in a conversation.
Yeah, I think the proactivity is absolutely key. Yeah. Okay. Just thinking about parents and carers a little bit more. What can parents do and carers to support young people who are considering apprenticeships?
Okay. Support.
Perhaps through the application process, through when they're perhaps wondering what they can do.
So I would say making sure that application process is key. Depend upon what the application process is. Making sure that if they require a CV, that the CV is kept up to date. Making sure that when CV and application is being completed, spelling mistakes, grammar, making sure that you're selling yourself in essence. That's what you're trying to do. How can parents, guardians, carers help? I think just by being there and engaging in conversation, and supporting where needed, and making sure that you keep an eye on what they're doing as well. Because I'm also conscious that with social media, it's making sure that you understand what the child is doing, because it's very key not to go down a particular hole where you don't want to. So safeguarding in essence.
Yeah.
So and another thing that I would say is talk and be open. Come to yourself, for example, Sandra. Engage in conversations and be very open. I think that's really key for children as well.
And what about once a young person's in their first role and they're perhaps 16, 17, 18, maybe 19, do parents just step back and stay out of it? Or is there still a support role to be played once that person's going through the process of kind of learning to be an employee effectively?
Yeah, for me, being a parent who's got a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, I would say being there, irrespective of the age, is fundamental anyway. Apprenticeships are slightly different. So 16 to 18, they're still legally a child. So I would be involved. From an 18 plus perspective, then there'd be different safeguarding approaches, different data protection, because the individual will be over 18. So they'd be legally an adult. But being involved as long as the learner, your child wants you to be involved, really. But being supportive, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So we're moving towards the end of our time now. I've just got a couple more questions. What one piece of advice would you give to a young person who's coming towards the end of their schooling and thinking about the world of work?
Okay, that's an interesting one. So clarifying point, if that's okay. When do you mean by the end of their school? So the
Well, yeah, go on,
sorry,
carry on.
that's okay. I was going to say the reason why I'm saying that is because I think if they're at the end of school, it's too late. Because obviously they'll be thinking about the next stage. So I would look at maybe when they're 13, 14, engaging in dialogue and conversation around what their passion is, what do they want to do, what would they like to do, what are they good at school, what their future career could possibly look like for the next, say, 5, 6 years. Don't make it for the rest of their life because that's endless when
Yes.
you're 14. So for the next 5 years, what it would you like to do? And then really engage in that conversation and topic, and then explore, like I said, some of those occupational maps, some of the apprenticeship routes out there, some of the academic routes if they want to follow into sixth form and university. But explore opportunities. Go and engage in a conversation with the school, with the college, the local training provider. I would say even at 14, go start now. Absolutely.
I think that's really good advice because the thing is, it takes a long time to clarify your thinking about what you want to do. And obviously, when you're that young, you've got the whole "you can't be what you can't see" problem is until you start exploring, you don't realise all the things that are out there.
No, no, totally agree. And like we've explored over this call, there's a wealth of apprenticeships out there that I don't think people have woken up to. So it's going and engaging, going and have a look. You can do it in the comfort of your own home. You can look on the website, or just go in and explore in the local college. Go and engage in a conversation. Go to an open day.
Thank you. And so, what's the biggest decision you've ever taken in your career, and what impact has it had?
Okay, that's an interesting question. The biggest decision in my career, I would say, was to start my own businesses. It was how can I phrase it? It's very safe, very nice working for somebody. It's very interesting when you go and start your own business. The unknowns are there, especially when you're operating a training provider on a government website that has to have Ofsted. So for me, that was interesting. Not, I wouldn't say difficult. I would say interesting and challenging. Took me on a huge journey, which I'm proud of, and one that I wish to continue.
Brilliant, thank you. And finally, what's next for you? Not at the end of the line yet. So what's next?
No, gosh, no. I don't think I'm ever going to retire. So there's a lot for me. I've got another training business as well, not in the UK. So focusing on professional apprenticeships. We are where we want to be. So like I said, we're Ofsted Outstanding in every area. We've got 100% pass rate with our endpoint assessments. And I believe the last figure was 94% distinction rate. So we've done what we wanted to do, which was to support young people in their career and their aspirations. But I want that to continue. So it's building on pro apprenticeships. And, I know this is everyone's catchphrase, but ideally leaving pro apprenticeships as a legacy. And then go and build on my other ventures that I've got in the background as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really interesting talking to you, and I think you've added a lot. So thank you. That's it for this episode of Future Careers Made Clear. If you'd like practical tools to support what comes next, you can explore the One Big Next app. I'm Sandra Davis. Thanks for listening.